we always compare Harappans and the Mesopotamians and the Egyptians always, because they had contact with each other.
Yes.
And they were the three ancient civilizations of the world. So we always compare, Harappans, with their contemporaries in the West. And we find, a lot of stark, difference between these two, civilizations. Mesopotamian and Egyptians are close to each other because, they have more or same system. But Harappans are completely different system. We say when, suppose given a choice, which site you would like to visit, I will also say that I want to visit Egyptian site because there are pyramids,
Yes.
and maybe life-size images and temples, ziggurats, etc. Harappans have not created those type of monumental architecture, and the general impression people get is that Harappans were not competent enough. They were not capable of creating this type of maybe monumental architecture. That is not true. Let me tell you that Harappans were considered to be the best civil engineers in the contemporary world. If they had decided to, construct this type of monumental architecture, they could have easily done that. But here, there are two differences we see here.
So namaste Vasantji. Welcome to this
Namaste.
talk show. And
Namaste.
I'm very happy to have you here. After a long time we had this discussion and now we are connecting. So
Finally, yes. Finally,
yeah,
we are connecting.
finally
Yes.
we are connecting. Yeah. So definitely you are archaeologist, but I had gone through flip through your 87 pages resume is available for the internet. So
Okay.
definitely it's a huge thing. So I can say to the people who are watching that you are archaeologist proto history. It has been mentioned that you are archaeologist proto history, and then of course you are also involved in maritime National Maritime Heritage Complex as well. So these are the
Yes.
two different things actually, or they are interconnected.
They are very much connected.
Acha, they are very much connected.
Yeah, because in this project, we are trying to showcase the entire maritime heritage of the country at one place.
Oh, wow.
And that is right from, maybe prehistoric times still present.
Oh, that's really a long history.
That's a huge, that's a very huge project.
Yes. So today we want to discuss actually Harappa civilization in the context of yoga. In a way, the yoga might have been, a progress during Harappan civilization, because when I go through the history, I see that, Vedic period is after the civilization period, in the civilization periods. And prior to that, like prior to Vedic period, we had this, yoga tradition in India. So that is completely, I think very few people might be aware of it, including those who are following yoga or yoga teachers, or those who are studying yoga as well. So I want to know that, but prior to that, we want to know some basic things about Harappa civilization, like, what was the geographical area that was covered during Harappa civilization. And I think Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, these two are the cities and of the Indus civilization, right?
Okay, I think I will begin. Let me also make one small correction.
Sure.
The Harappans and the Vedic people, they are one and the same.
Oh,
Yeah, I always call the Harappans as the Vedic people because whatever description we find in the Rigvedic text, we have archaeological evidence in the Harappan period only, not before nor afterward. And the description given in the text matches very well with the Harappan lifestyle and the activities that carried out by the Harappans. Harappa, basically, I have research on the Harappan culture and done extensive research excavations in different parts of the country. And one thing I would like to mention that Harappans are the founders of the Indian culture. The culture that we follow today
Yes.
that is, continuing from the Harappan times. They are the ones who have established, this characteristic feature of the Indian cultures. So the foundation is laid in the Harappan period itself. And Harappan people certainly were very conscious about health. And two important sciences that they developed. One is the yoga science, we call it as yoga science, and the other one is the meditation. So this is part now. Meditation, yoga is maybe integral part. But at the same time, we also have found actual remains of some medicinal herbs also.
Okay.
So probably Ayurveda also was practiced initiated by the Harappans.
Yeah,
We don't have
possible.
very big evidence, but there is an indication that perhaps because we are finding the remains of the medical herbs in the Harappan settlements, we can certainly suggest that Harappans also have introduced this particular important medical science, that is Ayurveda. So this statement is based on the actual evidence. This is not an inference because we have excavated number of sites. And let me tell you that the research that we have carried out now clearly indicate that we have a very long Harappan tradition. The work that I did at the site of Rakhigarhi and other sites in the Saraswati basin, which have been excavated by different groups, Archaeological Survey of India and some universities, we have found very strong evidence about the beginning of the Harappan civilization, Harappan culture rather. I use two terms here, Harappan culture and Harappan civilization.
Okay, why is it
So so I'll tell you, the entire time span of the Harappan culture is from 6000 BCE to 1300 BC. That is the entire span of the Harappan culture. And then Harappan culture gradually grew, from a very modest life, modest beginning, very small, maybe village, grew into urban phase around 2500 BCE.
Okay.
So the urban phase from 2500 BC to 2000 or 1900 BC, that was the phase which we call as the Harappan civilization phase, because we find the development of this culture during that particular phase.
Yes.
So most of the knowledge system that we follow today, that was introduced by the Harappans in the early stage, but it was perfected during this civilization phase around 2500 BC and between 2500 and 1900 BCE. Okay. So when we study the distribution of sites, let me take you back. In fact, the sites were discovered, Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, in 1920s. Particularly the site of Harappa was discovered accidentally because the British government was constructing a railway line between Lahore and Multan. And the railway line was passing by the Harappan. There is a site, big Harappan site. So it was passing by this particular site. And there were structures visible on the surface. So people were taking the bricks, using the bricks for constructing the railway line there. So that is how the site was that came to the notice of the archaeologist. And then of course this this was in 1920.
1920. Okay.
Yeah, and that time there was a British officer, John Marshall. So John Marshall was the Director General of the Archaeological Survey of India. And the Archaeological Survey of India is the custodian of the archaeological sites in the country, heritage archaeological sites. So they stopped the destruction and John Marshall decided to undertake excavation. The first large-scale excavation in Indian subcontinent was taken up at the site of Harappa, which is in Pakistan today. And then, of course, the site of Mohenjo-daro, which is in Sindh province of Pakistan. Of course, earlier it was part of India only. Yes. After partition, it went to Sindh province. So that site was known to the local people because the meaning of Mohenjo-daro in Sindhi language means mound of death.
Oh,
That is the meaning. So people used to offer worship on this particular mound, on because we always believe that our ancestors lived there. So we lit lamp on the site. So that tradition was going on. But in 1911, one Dr. Bhandarkar from Pune, he actually noticed the site and he brought to the notice of the professionals, notice to the notice of the archaeologists. And then when this excavation at Harappa was started, then also simultaneously Archaeological Survey of India started the work at the site of Mohenjo-daro also. So these are the two important sites, very classical sites. And then, of course, simultaneously when the excavation was happening, the archaeologists were also exploring the area around them. So they discovered number of small, medium, and big sites in the Indus River basin. And usually in archaeology, we term a culture when we identify it maybe at a particular place. For example, the site of this particular culture was identified at Harappa. Therefore, it is called Harappa. Harappa is a village, like so many villages in different parts of South Asia. So, but the elements of the culture were identified at Harappa, so it was initially called as the Harappan culture.
okay.
Then it was noticed that there are sites in the Indus River Valley, lot of sites. So the other term like Indus culture or Indus civilization, Indus Valley civilization, and now even with some scholars call this as Indus Saraswati civilization also, because this particular culture flourished in two river basins. One is of course Indus River basin, and parallel to that was the Saraswati basin. And Saraswati is frequently referred to in our literature,
Yes.
particularly Rigvedic text. And Rigvedic text has mentioned about flourishing, maybe settlements along the river bank of Saraswati, and we do find the evidence of the Harappan settlements in that region. So we can connect, in fact, with the Rigvedic text also here. Rigvedic text also has mentioned about cities. So we have large number of cities. Rakhigarhi is the biggest city now. Then Harappa, Mohenjo-daro. These are site called Dholavira in Kutch part of Gujarat. That site recently has been inscribed as a 40th World Heritage Site, the site of Dholavira, which is a Harappan city. So
Okay.
today we have discovered nearly 2,000 plus Harappan settlements, and they are located in both India and Pakistan.
So
So
Punjab
before
and Sindh
partition,
part, right?
before partition, most of the sites were located in Sindh province.
Okay.
And after partition, because most of the sites, known sites went to Pakistan, then the Indian archaeologists started exploring this region on this side. And today we have nearly, nearly 4/5 of the settlements are located in India. Out of 2,000 sites, nearly 1,500 sites are located in India now. In India, we find sites, in Jammu, and that is the northernmost limit.
Mm-hmm.
And then the easternmost limit is the Saharanpur district of Uttar Pradesh. And southernmost limit is almost Maharashtra. There is a site called Daimabad in
Okay.
the
In
Godavari
Maharashtra as
basin.
well, we have.
Yeah, we find the extent of the culture up to Maharashtra. And on the western part, we find on the Makran coast, which is in the Balochistan part of Pakistan and beyond. So on such a large area, nearly 1.5 to 2 million square kilometer area was occupied by the Harappan civilization people. So such a large and very extensive civilization it was.
It was the
Okay.
oldest one, right? We can
Yeah.
call
Now
the oldest
as
one.
not exactly oldest. It is contemporary to the Mesopotamian, which flourished in Iraq. That is a part of Iraq is called Mesopotamia. So it was flourished there. So that civilization is called Mesopotamian civilization.
Yes.
And in Egypt, in the middle phase of the Nile River basin, the Egyptian civilization flourished. So these three civilizations were almost contemporary. They flourished, around maybe 5,000 or 6,000 BCE. The urbanization happened around in the middle of the third millennium BCE, and the decline also starts almost same time, because around 2000 or 1900 BC, the climate became dry, and we have the scientific evidence for that, and that was a global phenomenon, not confined to any particular region. So that affected the major civilization. So around 1900 BC, 2000 BC, these three great civilizations began to decline. That was a gradual process. They have not suddenly disappeared, but
Yes.
Gradually, they decline, and then the urbanization also, declined. People came back into the village-based life system. So that was the brief history of the Harappan civilization, Harappan culture.
Yeah, it's interesting. One thing I want to understand here about Saraswati's, location exactly. So where exactly is the
Yes,
location?
Saraswati is today this particular river is called Ghaggar in India,
Okay,
and it also flows in Pakistan. So in Pakistan it is called Hakra. So Ghaggar Hakra, modern Ghaggar Hakra was the ancient Saraswati. And there is a description in the Rigvedic text. The Rigvedic text mentions that this particular river originates in the foothills of the Himalayas. Himalayas mentioned in the Rigvedic text. Rigvedic text also talks about the this 5 rivers
from Punjab.
in Punjab. Yes, the Punjab province, and talks about the settlements in the in this river basins. Also, it discusses that the river flows through desert part also. So it flows to this run of Kutch also in India. So it originates in the Shivaliks, then comes down in Punjab, in province of India. Then almost it crisscrosses the entire Haryana. Then it goes to the western part of Rajasthan, and from at Suratgarh in Rajasthan, it enters into Pakistan. And Pakistan, it goes straight for some time, and then comes straight down to Kutch part of Gujarat, and then meets the sea. So this is the entire course. So there's a proper description. We can identify this particular course. And recently, a lot of scientific work was also carried out to establish the course of river Saraswati. And the most glaring work in this respect is done by ISRO. So they analyze the satellite photography imageries, and they have identified the dry course of river Saraswati.
Oh,
And we have carried out the survey along this dry course, and we find number of settlements located along the dry course. So during that time, the river was very active, and therefore the settlements are found on the banks of river Saraswati.
that's
And
really
when we see the
interesting.
distribution of the Harappan sites, we find that nearly 2/3 of the Harappan settlements are located in the Saraswati basin, and only 1/3 are located in the Indus basin. So Saraswati was very, very important for the Harappans. There are two reasons for that. Because Indus was a very ferocious river. So very, very rarely we find, the settlements flourishing along the river banks of Indus. Even today, I visited, Mohenjo-daro, and I have seen that area. Even today, you will not find dense settlements along the bank of river Indus, because the river gets flooded, frequently, and it threatens the settlements located, on the banks. But that was not the case with the Saraswati. See, Saraswati was very, very, it was flowing through deep gorges. It was very safe river. Also, Saraswati had number of, network of tributaries. So the entire basin was occupied because there was a lot of water available, and there was no danger of flood in the Saraswati basin. And the entire Saraswati basin is very, very fertile. So because of that, Harappans have preferred mostly the Saraswati basin. So that is established now. And also we don't, we tried the scientists, geographers, geologists, hydrologists. They tried very hard to date the event when exactly the river has, has disappeared. At some stage, the river has disappeared, but when, that was not clear. But
Okay,
now
still it
we
is
can
not
use the
clear.
archaeological data.
Okay.
No, now it is, yeah, by using the archaeological data, we can try to suggest, this particular event. Because, as far as the, Harappan culture is concerned, we have three phases. The first early phase is called the formative stage, and that is called the early Harappan phase.
Okay.
So that is from 6000 BC to 2500 BC.
Mhm.
And then, of course, the most, flourishing phase, that is from 2500 to 1900 BC. That is the, civilization phase or the urban phase of the Harappan. And also then, there's a decline phase of the Harappan culture from 1900 to 1300 BC. So that is called the late Harappan phase. So when we analyze the data from the Saraswati River basin, we find that there are early Harappan settlements, large number of early Harappan settlements along the bank of river Saraswati. There are large number of settlements of the urban phase of the Harappan culture. But after 1900 BC, the settlements are going away from the river bank. So that is a very important indication. That means, the river was very active up to 1900 or 2000 BCE. And then, maybe started losing its significance. And therefore, people have preferred to
Migrated.
go away from this river bank. So that is a very important archaeological evidence that we are getting. And that indicates perhaps around 1900 BC or 2000 BCE, the river must have, lost its significance. Maybe the course was, it got disappeared somewhere. So that is the kind of evidence we are getting.
Okay. This is something
And some of
you.
the most important sites like Rakhigarhi. Now Rakhigarhi is the, in terms of size, that is the biggest Harappan city. Then there are sites like, Banauli, then Kalibanga, Parmana. These are the important sites located in the Saraswati basin. Even Dholavira, which is a World Heritage Site now, that is in Kutch part, and it is, uh, near the course of Saraswati only. Okay.
Yeah. So these sites are available for general people, like people can
Yeah,
go and
the site
visit
of
them.
Dholavira, one can go and see the site of Dholavira.
Okay.
That site was excavated, and the remains have been preserved there.
Okay.
Then there is
Great.
a site called Lothal where we are developing the Maritime Museum and the Maritime Heritage Complex. There also one can see Lothal has the earliest dockyard anywhere in the world. And Harappans were the pioneer in building ships and boats. They have taught the world, in fact, how to build that. And they have created this infrastructure for building and repairing ships at Lothal. So that is a backdrop for the, this maritime heritage
Okay.
project.
Okay. Now the connection I can understand.
Yeah, right. So, this, there are very important settlements located in the Saraswati basin. And now, when we excavate more and more sites, now the importance of the Saraswati basin is, coming out nicely, and how it has contributed to the development.
Yeah, because it
Okay.
whatever I have read, so far there are like two discussions as there, like it might be like imaginary river. Some people believe that some people believe like the coast has been uh,
Yeah,
dry
I
right
think
now.
now I think there should not be any
Yes.
imagination, because, scientifically we have proved that. But there are some people who have, preconceived notion, and they want to, argue for the sake of argument. So we cannot, convince this type of people. But most of the
So do we
scientific
have these
community,
ISRO images available publicly?
yes, 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 that is in public domain. And also the ISRO scientists have published, research papers on that. So that is a proper research carried out.
Okay, that's
There is
really good.
yeah, there's one Professor Sharma who has published paper also in this. So maybe I can tell you the reference. But what is interesting now, because see, Harappans were pioneering, developing many things. For example, even though the urbanization also happened simultaneously in Mesopotamia and Egypt, the system was different there in Mesopotamia and Egypt. We always compare Harappans and the Mesopotamians and the Egyptians always because they had contact with each other.
Yes.
And they were the three ancient civilizations of the world. So we always compare, Harappans, with their contemporaries in the West. And we find, a lot of stark, difference between these two, civilizations. Mesopotamian and Egyptians are close to each other because, they have more or same system. But Harappans are completely different system. We say when, suppose given a choice, which site you would like to visit, I will also say that I want to visit Egyptian site because there are pyramids,
Yes.
and maybe life-size images and temples, ziggurats, etc. Harappans have not created those type of monumental architecture, and the general impression people get is that Harappans were not competent enough. They were not capable of creating this type of maybe monumental architecture. That is not true. Let me tell you that Harappans were considered to be the best civil engineers in the contemporary world. If they had decided to, construct this type of monumental architecture, they could have easily done that. But here, there are two differences we see here. One is that, Harappans had completely different administrative system, and the Mesopotamians and the Egyptians had different administrative systems. They are monarchical system there. We find palaces,
Yes.
we find royal tombs there. And the development that happened in Mesopotamia and Egypt was around the royal families only.
That's the
So
stark
all
difference.
these creations were for the royal family, for the monarchical, system only. So that is, that is a different system. And here, whatever evidence, we don't have direct evidence, but the indirect evidence clearly indicates that Harappans had some sort of democratic system. We don't find palaces, we don't find royal tombs. So, kings and queens were not there. That is quite clear. Probably, the Harappans introduced some kind of panchayat system. Villages or cities were managed by, the elderly people of the community. Like today we have Sarpanch and, this type of system. So that system has percolated down from the Harappans probably.
Yeah,
So
it is
Harappans
possible.
were the first, in the world, in fact, to introduce this democratic system. And it is not that the Harappans have not created monumental architecture. They have created monumental architecture, but they are mostly utility architecture. You find, very strong and huge fortification walls. At Dholavira, if you go there, you will see almost 18-meter wall, thick fortification wall, surrounding the city. And that was done by the people. The entire community was involved in doing that, and for the people. In Mesopotamia and Egypt, in Mesopotamia and Egypt, we clearly find the evidence of slavery. It is properly documented in the form of sculptures and paintings there. So Mesopotamians, Egyptians, they were very aggressive because they had monarchical system. So they used to invade the surrounding areas and earn, maybe get the wealth from there. And they used to use that. And people who are defeated, they were used for constructing, those pyramid and ziggurat-like structures. We don't find that system here at all. Completely a free society the Harappans had. So that is one, difference between Harappans and the Mesopotamian. People should know about that. Why I'm elaborating this? Maybe it is not part of our discussion, but people should know about this.
No, we should know this, right? Because we have
Yeah,
democracy.
and second,
now we are the largest democracy in the world.
exactly.
India.
Now we have now also let me give you one information that we have Indian historical ICHR, Indian Council of Historical Research, ICHR.
Mm-hmm.
So that is the biggest organization in fact connected with the history writing and the direction of history given to society. So they, and I'm part of that now. I'm part of the council of the ICHR. So we have produced one book on the India, the mother of democracy, and we have cited the actual evidence. And there also we have suggested that the democracy in India is almost 4,500 years old. Not the nobody has taught us. In fact, that is very much
Yeah.
part of the
The culture here.
system here. So that book is available. I just wanted to say why there is a difference. So this is one reason for the difference. And the other reason was that Harappans always cared for the common people. They generated a lot of wealth through through trade, through logical way. Of course, this is not a illogical or illicit way. By following the right path, they collected a lot of wealth, and that wealth was used by the Harappans for developing very clean and hygienic cities, very well planned, clean and hygienic cities. Whereas the wealth that was maybe amassed in Mesopotamia and Egypt, that was used only by the royal families, and it was buried along with the royal family only.
Yeah.
If you see the royal tombs, they are so rich. We do not find even in the entire Harappan region. We have no huge amount of wealth like they have in fact in the tombs. So here the philosophy was different here. The Indian philosophy was different because they always cared for the common people, and therefore they were able to do that.